Hi there, it's Yannick, and today is our first episode of the Yannick 2.0 series. Well, we're going to start with something that I find fascinating, which is fallacies. So I enjoy the idea of philosophical arguments, fallacies, and stuff like that. I just find that, as vague as they might sound, they're things that pertain to our everyday life and how we could improve them basically by learning these things. So, the first fallacy I'm going to talk about today, I'm going to talk about this fallacy only for today, actually, because it's very fascinating to me and it's something that I see in literally almost everywhere. It's very common, but we just don't know. We've not put a name to it. We're going to talk about the sunk cost fallacy. So basically, the sunk cost fallacy is um, the phenomenon whereby a person is reluctant to abandon a strategy or course of action because they have invested heavily in it, even when it is clear that abandonment would be more beneficial. This is according to Wikipedia, actually. It means that this is just trying to describe our tendency to follow through on an endeavor, even if we have already, because we have invested time, effort, or money into it, even if the current costs outweigh the benefits. So let's break that down. We're trying to say that because we've invested our time, our efforts, our money into a particular endeavor. It might be building a house, it might be starting a business, it might be a relationship, it might be a job or a career. Because we've invested our time and our effort into that particular endeavor, we find it difficult to stop or to leave it, even when we begin to realize that it's better for us to leave this thing. This thing is not going to have any future benefits, or it's beginning to weigh, my life in a negative way. We still stick to it because of the sunk cost fallacy. Now, basically, I'm also going to I've gotten some of my materials from Wikipedia, of course, and the the Decision Lab, which is one of this sites that post about fallacies and financial decisions and things like that. You could actually check them out. The Decision Lab, you could check them out. They have a lot of things that are interesting. So, reading about this, you would discover that one of the reasons why we do this as humans is because we are very emotional. The idea of loss is more painful, is a more powerful emotion for us to process than the idea of a gain, which means that we feel worse off if we have lost. For example, you were just going on the road and someone swindled you of 100,000 naira. You feel so terrible. You think about it for a longer time than you think about maybe your family member just sending you 100,000 naira, the same equal amount for flexing. We are more attached to our losses than we are attached to our gains, which means basically that we would think more and be more pained by the idea of losing 100,000 than we would be as excited about gaining 100,000. The idea of gaining 100,000 seems cool, fun, it's very interesting. But as soon as you get the money, it almost like 2 3 days, your mind already assumes that, well, it's my money now, and that's cool. And you just forget how excited you are when you gained the money. But if you lose 100,000, a month down the line, you are still thinking about the pain of losing that money. You are still worrying about it, like, how was I so foolish? How did this happen to me? And we keep going on and on like that. This is one of the reasons why the sunk cost fallacy applies so much in our life and in the decisions that we make without us being conscious about it, because we are more emotional when it comes to loss than gain. The sunk cost fallacy, like I said earlier, it describes our tendency to follow through on an endeavor because we have already invested time in it. For example, you started a business with, like, say, maybe 10 million naira. You opened a shop in a place where you think is very commercial. You stocked up your shop, you paid for this, you did all of that. 2 years down the line, you're obviously not seeing sales. You're obviously putting money from other resources into that particular business, but you're not going to stop, or rather, you're not even stopping because you're like, no, but when I opened the shop, I invested a whole 10 million naira into it. How will I just throw all that investment away? No, I will stick to it. And you keep coming to the shop, you keep opening, you keep trying to keep the business afloat. The business is not working. You can see it. It is very evident that the business is not working. But because of the sunk cost fallacy and our emotional attachment to loss, we do you find it difficult to stop, to just say, okay, I'm done with this, I'll start afresh. Because your mind keeps saying, I can't lose all this. I can't lose all the time that I've invested in this business. I can't lose all the money that I've invested in this business. And you keep going on and on and on like that till you're stuck in a place where you know that is not heading anywhere, basically. If you listen closely to my explanation and you think about it in relation to your life, you probably realize that, okay, maybe that career, that relationship, that friendship is actually not giving you what it's supposed to give. But because of this loss aversion that we have, you stick to it anyway. Well, it occurs also because we are not purely rational decision makers. We are mostly influenced by our emotions. When it comes to buying things, loving people, making financial decisions, making family choices, and things like that, most of the time we like to tell ourselves that we are very rational thinkers. Oh, I married her because she's this, that. I'm getting this job, I'm choosing this job over this job because this, that. But most of the time, at the base of all those decisions is our emotions speaking to us. We just don't realize it. We are more emotion than we are rational. And we only try to rationalize our emotional um decisions after the fact. Now you've made the decision to stay in this place. And now when people ask you, you are trying to rationalize your decision. Oh, why did you choose to marry that girl despite this, that? And then you're like, no, I was being very rational because she could do this, she could do that, this, that. But at the base of it all, it was just your emotions speaking to you. Now, your emotion, because of your emotions, you've been able to rationalize your reasons. But at the base of it all, it wasn't a rational decision to begin with. So that is one of the reasons why the sunk cost fallacy keeps recurring in our lives, because we are not purely rational decision makers. We are often influenced by our emotions. Now, that is subject to everybody. Your emotions might be good or bad, whatever it is, but most of the time, our decisions are based off of our emotions. Now, we are also prone to loss aversion. As humans, like I already said, we always think more of our loss than our gains. Now, if a particular thing is about to end, instead of us thinking of, oh, it's about to end, I'm about to get off this bondage and I'm about to start a new thing, move to a new country or sell off my properties because it's no longer working over here and move to a new state and damn everything, we will start thinking about, after all the 10 years of staying in Lagos, ah, after buying this house, after doing this one, after doing that one, after, you start thinking about your loss. You start amplifying your loss than your gains, because that's just how we are wired, basically. And when I say loss aversion, we are averse to loss as humans. And loss aversion, let me quickly chip that in, is a cognitive bias that describes why, for individuals, the pain of losing is psychologically twice as powerful as the pleasure of gaining. The loss felt from money or from any other valuable object can feel worse than gaining that same thing. Well, this is not just me saying it now. It's also experts speaking on it. This is actually coined from a subject on insurance from the Decision Lab as well, talking about insurance and things like that and why you should focus on insurance. Well, that's a different topic. So, loss aversion is one of the reasons why we do this, why the sunk cost fallacy keeps reoccurring in our life. We have an aversion to loss. We don't want to feel like we lost out on anything. That's one of the reasons why people would probably start a course and say, okay, I want to be a doctor. right? And you're in an education system like say in Nigerian education system. 2 years into the course, you're no longer enjoying it. You're no longer feeling good about yourself. Whatever drive that pushed you into starting this is totally gone, and you're no longer feeling the drive. But you can't stop. You're like, a whole 2 years, I will now stop. Lie, I will continue. And before you know it, 5 years, 6 years, 7 years, you're still doing the same thing that you're possibly not enjoying. It's really it's something that is difficult to understand from what I'm saying, but I'm sure you understand. You can relate to what I'm saying. um it's better for us to feel gains. It's just how our mind works. um it's very difficult naturally to um overweigh or use our rational thinking to outweigh our emotional thinking most of the time. If you're not aware of this kind of idea, if you're not aware that you're even living in a sunk cost fallacy situation, you might not even know what you're doing. You're just thinking, you're rationalizing your emotions like, no, I already put my time into it, I already put my money into it, I already did all of that, I can't stop now, I'm going to keep going. And it's all it can be a bloodline sometimes, thinking to yourself like, do I stop or do I continue? But at certain times in our lives, we have to be honest with each other, and we have to sit down with ourselves and have a conversation of and have a rational conversation. It is important to understand where you stand at every point. Every point in a business, in a relationship, in any decision you are making, any long term decision, you have to always have stop gaps where you sit down, analyze where you're coming from, how far you've gone, and the progression of your current actions. Okay, if I keep putting 1 million naira into this thing, it has not yielded up. I've put 1 million naira like 10 times. I've not even yielded up to 2 million naira, like cumulatively. Why am I still investing in it? Can I diversify? Should I add this? Should I call in investors? Do I need to stop? At every point, I think we need to take a stop gap, reevaluate our decisions, and start all over. It's never a crime to start all over. I think this is one thing I learned from my dad. He used to say it as a joke, but he always said that it's never too late to start over, that anybody can start at any point. I'm not sure you understood the impact of that statement, but it was very impactful. He kept saying it like, you can decide at 60 and say, okay, I want to go back to school. It's fine. You can start over at any point. And it's not just life, it's not just big groundbreaking decisions like that. It could be in small things, it could be in that business. You've been in that shop for the past 5 years, you've hardly made enough gain. Is it time for you to stop? Remove the emotional attachment you have to the business, remove the time it has taken you to invest in the business, and evaluate it from a rational point of view. Is it going to be profitable long term? Is it something that, oh, other people invested in it for 20 years before they saw a massive gain, and they're saying, okay, this is a good thing to continue investing on? Or people have been in this and they've always gone down the drain either ways, no matter how much they've invested in it, it never worked out. And then you tell yourself, it's time for you to stop. So at every point, I want us to be rational thinkers rather than emotional thinkers. It's very difficult because we have blockers in our minds that basically tell us, no, 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 use your emotions first. But I would just like us to be more conscious of the fact, more conscious of this idea of sunk cost fallacy and how it pertains in our everyday life. In your friendship, in your relationships, most especially, I think in relationships, you've been in a relationship 5, 7 years doesn't mean it has to end in marriage. It doesn't mean you have to be with that person. If someone has been treating you bad for 5 years or 7 years, the person is not going to automatically start treating you well as soon as he puts a ring on it, right? So it's not like the ring changes anything. It's not like the more you go, the more you suffer for it, the better it becomes. There's nothing like that basically. And there is no reward for suffering. I think we should always amplify that idea as Nigerians. There is no reward for suffering. Suffering sometimes is just suffering. You're just suffering. And sometimes the power to stop or end your suffering is right there in your hands. And so I would like us to focus on the concrete actions instead of feeling wasteful or having a lot of guilt. So as soon as the guilt comes in and says, "Oh, but you've been with this person for 7 years. What would people say? Where do you start from? How do you do this? How do you do that?" You tell yourself there's a promise of a future that is better and with more smiles, a future with a happier relationship, a future with a better partner that is more appreciative, than 7 years of suffering with one person that is actually heading nowhere. Do you understand? Or that business or that career, you've been in the career for like 8 years and you're like, "Oh, I'm stuck in the same place. I'm not enjoying this. It doesn't look like I would gain anything." And in my career as well, I've seen a lot of people take decisions like that where they just stop, they just resign and they just go home. And I'm yet to find somebody that it turned out so bad for. Actually, it's funny, but it's true. It usually turns out that they are happier after making this kind of life changing decisions to like just stop. This is not working for me. I'm just going to stop right here. At the end of the day, when I reconnect to these people, I find that they are happier, they're in better spaces, and they can now make more better decisions for themselves because they've just put an end to their suffering. So usually we are scared of what is at the other side of the fence, but sometimes it's better, the grass is greener. With that, I end this episode. It's not too long, but I hope you learned something. Have a great day. Bye.